John Will Creasy was my uncle, my youngest uncle on the Creasy side. He was one of 7 children.
Why should people who know Roanoke, what should they know about John Will?
They should know that this man loved the city. He was very involved, not just as a businessman, which was a separate thing on his advertising, but he did projects throughout the city and throughout the valley. He worked on the World War II D-Day Memorial. He did things like that. He worked on churches in the black part of town and renovated them. And he was Sidewalk Art Show, the Mill Mountain Theater, Art in the Alley. He was promoting arts in the Roanoke Valley and promoting the Roanoke Valley. He had all these plans. He died, I think, way too young. If he'd lived longer, the valley would have even had more of his impact.
Tell me about Festival in the Park and how he was involved in that.
I think he was one of the founders, and a bunch of artists.
Can you start that out with, I think John Will Creasy was one of the founders.
John Will Creasy was one of the founders of Festival.
Let's start again.
Okay.
Let me get quiet.
John Will Creasy was one of the founders of Festival in the Park. I don't know who the other artists were. It was before my time, or very, very early on. But a bunch of them got together and decided they want to have a festival here in Roanoke, with arts and paintings and sculpture and stuff. And I know he was a strong supporter of it, and it started just as a little thing, and now it's a weekend in Roanoke, and it's a pretty big art show, regional art show.
What about his involvement in Center and Square?
I know he worked with the theater museum. I know he did parts of that, and I know he was involved in the plannings of it. I don't know, how the buildings were stuff, but I know he was an instrumental person in pushing, because again, that was something to promote art and promote Roanoke City, and I know he was very involved in all of that.
Tell me, do you know anything about the story that John Will always said he came up from really simple means, and that he didn't like the way he talked when he was a kid. He worked on his diction, which probably may have saved his life, because he ended up being a radio operator in D-Day instead of being one of the grunts on the ground. But
Well, John Will Creasy's father was killed when he was just a young boy. He was a locomotive engineer, and there was an accident on the line, and he was killed. And then Grandmother Creasy had the 7 children to raise, and not a lot of money. The railroad gave her just a pittance, and I think she bought a house with it to rent and give them a little extra income. But my dad was the first of the children to go to college, and he was like the 4th child, and they deemed that he was the smartest of the lot, so they sent him. John Will was able to go because the brothers and sisters helped him when he went to in Richmond. What is it? I forgot the name of the school in Richmond, but it was an art school, and he went there, and that's where he met his wife Adelaide. And so he didn't have anything. I mean, he started out with nothing.
have you ever heard any stories about him and Fred and why he and Fred, I mean, they were as opposite as 2 folks could be, and yet they seemed to work real well.
Yeah, Fred and John Will were opposites. John Will was not he was an artist. Everyone's commented to me, and I noticed as well, he just had an artistic touch. He could look at things, and he did interior decorating for banks and stuff to make extra money. But I think Fred was the businessman, and I think they recognized early on they'd make a good combination. They liked each other and they cared for each other, but how they actually got together, I don't have a clue. No.
Tell me about some of the watercolor work that John Will did. How prominent was he? What was his work like?
John Will Creasy was a well-recognized local watercolorist. Because he worked, he didn't have a time to pour out a lot of paintings like contemporary artists like Eric Fitzpatrick. In fact, he would paint mainly when they were on vacation. Every summer, the Creasys would rent a big cabin, a real big house at Pawleys Island, and all of them would go down there, all the brothers and sisters and the family. So it'd be about 35, 40 people. Well, he spent the week painting, and that's what he did, and that's all. And so a lot of times when a show would come up, he would really have to bust his hump to get more paintings so he'd have enough to show, because he really didn't have enough time to do what he would have liked to have done. He didn't have the ability to have the income that he had to work, so he couldn't paint full time. I think he would have loved to have painted full time, but he just didn't have, the income, but he was able to. They're all over the valley. He did thousands of paintings, and I don't think he ever, I don't know if he did, he got any national awards, but he won all sort of local and state awards. I mean, he won probably every award there was in the state. And everyone I talked to just thought he was one of the best watercolorists they'd ever seen.
Why do you think our community is a better place because John Will was part of it? How did he shape it, and what is his legacy?
John Will believed in public service. Everything that he could do for this valley, he would do. If anyone would approach him and say, could you help with this project, if he thought it had merit, he was involved in it in some form or fashion. Not just in art, he did things decorative to the valley, buildings in the valley, like the center and the square, all these different sort of things that have his handprints on them if you went back and looked at the very foundations of where they were created.
You've done great. I think what I need is just places to put you in. Let's see here.
You need to know something about his family.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me a little bit about John Will's family?
John Will was married to Adelaide Creasy. She was a cripple. They met in art school. They adopted 2 children. Their son was killed in an industrial accident when he was probably 19 or 20. Their daughter survived both of them. They've been dead for a little while now, and she just died several years ago. But they had a beautiful home, and every Thanksgiving was always at John Will's, and there was a lot of Creasy events, and he would always do more than his fair share of doing it, and you'd love to go in his home because it was immaculately decorated in his artwork, and he had other artists too. It wasn't just his work. He loved different works, and there was sculpture there, and he just loved all it. He was very involved with Walter Biggs. Walter Biggs is a nationally famous artist from Salem. He was an illustrator in a lot of the big national magazines, and he was, I think, the executor of his estate, so he did a lot in preserving Mr. Biggs's works. And I know there was at least one show Roanoke College did that he was intimately involved in. He collected a lot of, not just his work, but collected a lot of the other works of Mr. Biggs to show, and they had a big brochure, and it was a very well attended thing. And he was very happy to have known Mr. Biggs and to have worked with him. He was a great artist.
Well, you knew John Will when you were really a boy, and I always was intrigued by the fascinating gadgets he had because he loved to travel and he'd always pick up something. I remember he had the African mask, and I don't ever know what happened to his carousel horse that he had in his.
Well,
what was it like to go in that house as a young man and see all these weird things that places you hadn't even dreamed of?
That house was unusual, and the carousel, he loved carousel horses. And so he made a contact with a guy that was an actual carousel horse maker. And actually buying a carousel horse was very expensive even then. But he had him make him a full-size carousel horse. And I had to, when the estate was closed, I had to sell the horse. I've got the model that it was done in my house. And like I said, he had all sort of different artwork. He had different artists and different styles and African stuff. And he traveled the world. Even though Adelaide was a cripple, he took her everywhere. I mean, they went to Italy and they went to France and went to Spain, and so they traveled quite a bit. And while he was traveling, he did a lot of pictures, slides, and obviously when he'd come back and he'd do paintings off of those as well from what he would do when he was on vacation. And so I had books and books and books of his slides from all over the world. So they traveled quite a bit.
What do you think made John Will so creative? I mean, his background is not the background you would expect somebody who's just really a luminary to have.
That's an interesting question, and my uncles always said he was different, and he truly was different. I mean, he was just as lovable. He was a great uncle, but he had that way of looking at things and doing things that none of his brothers had, and he didn't have any art training, I know, when he was young. He couldn't have had because we didn't have any money to have it, and there certainly wasn't much in the schools at that time. So when he wanted to go to school, they had to really help to get doing it because no one, thought you're not going to make much of a living as an artist back then. So, but I don't know what it is. He just had that natural, innate ability that some people have, and everything. He, like I said, he did banks. He did a lot of banks. Did all the ones. Where's that bank from? Martinsville. But he did, and they were in Texas, so he traveled down there and did them, and he planned the entire interior of the bank, all the paintings and stuff, and he just finished them. And he did some decorating in my house, and he did decorating for a lot of people in the Roanoke Valley as well.
Tell me about his sense of humor.
He had a wiry sense of humor. Very, he liked jokes. He was not a prude, he was always funny, and we'd always have a good time. Something would come up, and he would tell you stories, and he was a good storyteller, and he was a lot of fun to be with. I always enjoyed my time with Uncle John Will.